My name is Sheena Yo, and I would like for you to join me in welcoming Dr. Elizabeth Woolsey, and she is going to give us a lecture on art and the influence literature that it has had. She is accomplished. She's a veterinarian and an accomplished author as well. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Okay, just a quick bio here. Just a little bit more, just so you have appreciation for the fact of what I'm going to do tonight, because I am so out of my element. It is ridiculous. Anyway, I went to Auburn University. My dad was a horse vet, or a really large animal vet in California. I graduated from Auburn, went back to California, and was there for a while till I met the accent, and I moved to Australia on a 2-year plan. That turned out to be 30. And I retired over there. I aged out, as I'd like to say, and I came back to the United States. While I was over in Australia, and even when I was in California, I just had an eye for art. I really liked art. Now, I have not got an artistic bone in my body, but I know what I like. And since I was a horse vet, I really like horse art. Not exclusively, but I like horse art. And so when I look at art, as I go around the gallery and stuff, I'm looking for anatomical variations. And I love to see a picture of a horse where everything's in the right place. And there's so many here that are like that. I mean, most of them are. So that's something that I really appreciated. When I was practicing with my father, he retired, and he had a client who was quite a famous artist in California. Her name was Ruth Dicker. She was one of the premier artists there. I mean, when she died, which was several years after I moved away, sadly, her obituary was in the Wall Street Journal, just to give you an idea of how prominent she was. But she was so California-based, I don't think you'd know her. And she had a horse called Jupiter. So I asked, she said to me, I don't know how to pay the bill because Jupiter got sick. And I said, well, how about if we trade for art? And this would be the first piece that I would get. And she goes, oh, well, I mean, how many pieces do you want for the bill? And I'm going, the bill is a couple $100. I went, are you crazy? I said, and we had become friends by then. And so I ended up getting my piece. And when I went to pick it up, Jupiter wasn't in the painting. And so I had to go back and get her to put Jupiter in there. And she goes, I don't do animals. I said, I'm not taking it unless Jupiter's in there. Many years after she passed, I heard that they were looking for all kinds of pieces to have kind of a retrospective. And I was in Australia at that stage, and the painting was too. Excuse me. And I called them and I said, well, I'm calling from Australia and I have 2 pieces of Ruth's. And they went, oh, okay, well, what's your name and all that? And they went, oh, wait a second. Do you have the Jupiter painting? And I said, yes, I do. And they're going, Harry, we found it, So that was my first one. And then after that, I collected more. Some of them were payments of bills. I also used my clients to do some of the covers for my books, because I tried to be as original as possible. So when I moved back from Australia, I left 5 horses, a cat, a dog, 2 cats, a dog, and all my kids. But I took all of my art, except for one piece, and it was the most valuable piece I had, but I just couldn't take it. I had a mural done on that shed. It's still there today, and it's one of my favorite pieces. I loved it so much that the first night after it was done, the fellow that did it said, now I need to put a kind of a sheen on there so people can't graffiti it. Now I'm in the middle of nowhere. No, who's going to graffiti it? But I sat out all night and waited for him to come to make sure that nobody came by and graffitied it. I mean, it's crazy, but that's how much I loved it. And so that's the only piece of art that I didn't take with me. So I like art. So when Sarah Baldwin asked me to do this, I mean, I went, you crazy, crazy, crazy. I don't know anything about that. You know, this is so far out of my comfort zone. I could talk all day about veterinary medicine. I can talk all day about all kinds of things. But this was going to be hard. And then I remembered what got me going writing my first book. A few years before I even conceived of the book, somebody sent me this photograph. It's by Charles Belden, and that's his wife. It's about 1930 or 36, I can't remember exactly. And he lived on the Pitchfork Ranch in Montana, and he photographed all kinds of things, and for ranch life and stuff. And there's a actual museum at University of Wyoming has one museum, but there's another museum, I think someplace in Montana, that has more of his stuff. So when I wrote my first book, which was about a woman that traveled back in time, I thought of this picture, and I've loved this picture so much. I put it on the cover of my very first book, and it got panned. Nobody liked it. So I had to change the cover. But I still love the picture. And so it's always it inspired me to write my first book. There's the cover of the book. And I even had cups made. When I retired, we gave all of our clients cups, you know, with, I think that says, "See you later, gone fishing," or something like that. Anyway, but that's the book now. We had to change the cover. So there's my introduction. Charles Belden was pretty much a kind of a character. He went to a university. He did quite a bit of photography, doing various things. But he ended up on this ranch, and he photographed and kind of chronicled life in the 30s on this Pitchfork Ranch. He said every picture should tell a story, and that's kind of how he went through his life and through his photography. So these are some other pictures that he did. These are just life out on the ranch, and just to give you some perspective. And there's lots of them. I couldn't find a book or anything like that, but he inspired me, if nothing else. Now I'm going to Montana with the cowgirl roundup thing, and they're going to have a photographer there. And so I sent that picture. I said, "Can we redo that with me?" And she goes, "Oh, we're going to try it." So we'll see what happens. As far as Remington and Russell were obviously kind of the premier people in that time, in the early West, but no one that I could find directly said, "Gee, that's what inspired my story, my Western story." However, they are considered the visual canon of Western literature. So while nobody said, "Oh, well, this, my book was from this painting or this statue or something like that," they still credit them with giving writers like me a vision of what we might have experienced if we were really there. So I always take a little break in between a couple things. So I'm going to show you. Australia is it's a beautiful place, but it's pretty plain. I mean, it's really plain. And plain, P-L-A-I-N, P-L-A-N, P-L-A-N-E, I mean, it's plain. Anyway, so probably the last 10 years or so before I moved away, and I moved away in 2020, the silo art became huge. And any place you went, people were doing art on the silos. And those all had a regional story and regional things, like the people that you'll see depicted on these the stories and stuff, they're real people from those different areas. These are both from the York Peninsula, which is about an hour from me, and it's one of my happy places when I was in Australia. I loved Australia, but the York Peninsula especially called to me. And the last book or second to last book that I just published is based there on the York Peninsula, which is barren. I mean, it's flat, it's barren, there's wheat, and then there's more wheat, there's a few sheep, and then there's wheat. And then there's these coastlines. So anyway, I still just love the place, and so anyway. So in researching this, I got to notice that David Wright, who is one of the artists that's featured here, was going to come and talk at the booth, and I don't even actually have the date. And he was releasing a book about his art that he's done over the years, and he's using James Crutchfield to write about each of the pieces. And so I actually ended up talking to David Wright, which, gee, what a nice guy, and talked to him about the work that he was doing, and had any, as far as he knew, had anybody written about any of the paintings. And he said he didn't think so, but they're writing about him. And so in that respect, and that's one way that art can inspire us, and there's plenty of literature about famous artists, you know, Da Vinci and Picasso and all that kind of stuff. So I ended up talking to James Crutchfield, and he's actually quite a nice guy too. And he wrote a book based on art, and basically it was the art of Owen Wister, not Owen Wister, of Sidney King, who did all these big murals that were all over in South Carolina, I believe. And so he went around and wrote stories all about them, and wrote about everything that was going on, because these were historical depictions. They were up for many, many years. Unfortunately, they've been taken down. But David Wright will be here, I think, I can't remember if he's next month or October, and he's going to do the official launch of his book, which he's already kind of selling and stuff, but the official launch will be here at the booth. And I'll definitely be there for that. So, more silo art. Now, the first person that I really want to talk about, or the first art piece I want to talk about officially, is The Girl with the Pearl Earring. Has any of you read the book or seen the movie? Oh, good. Okay. Oh, well, this is a painting, a very famous painting back in the 1600s by Johannes Vermeer. And he was kind of a moderate painter, but Tracy Chevalier is she's an author from, I think, the UK, and she saw this painting as a poster when she was a young girl, when she was maybe 16 or 17. I think she went to visit her sister in college, and she saw this painting, and she just fell in love with it. And she thought about it for years and years. She got her own poster. Her own poster was up for, I think she said, 16 years. And finally, she decided that she just had to write about this. She didn't know what the story was. She didn't know what was going on with it. But so she did a lot of research, and she came up with what she called the gold standard of literary potential. Nobody knew anything about it. They didn't know anything. There was no history. There was nothing. So she went, I can do whatever I want. but she wanted to make it as historically accurate as she possibly could. So, so she learned all about the culture of that time and what everything was going on during that time. And she knew that Vermeer had a large family. They had something like 13 kids, so they would have a lot of maids. They had lots of nobility coming in and out, different things going on, people getting paintings and stuff. So she decided that this had to be a maid, and the fact that her mouth is open apparently suggests more. It couldn't be one of the daughters because the mouth open suggests sexuality, and so so she made this story where the maid becomes somewhat kind of a funny object of Vermeer's affection, so to speak, in a kind of a probably not too, I don't think it goes that far, but anyway, so he paints this painting, and so she writes the story about this, and it had like 10 Academy Award nominations. Didn't get any, but it had a lot of nominations. Anyway, so this is the story of that. But in doing research for Tracy Chevalier, she's kind of a character. So she talked about, there's lots of YouTube and there's like TED Talks that she's done, all kinds of stuff, because this book was a huge bestseller. And one of the things she talked about going to museums, and she talked about museum fatigue, which I thought was pretty funny. She says, I go to a museum, and because she likes art, and she goes around, and she goes, after about 15 minutes, she goes, oh my God, it's like sensory overload, I've had too much. She wants to sit down and have a cup of coffee. And so she developed a way because she does love art, to go through museums. And what she does is she powers through. And like the booth, you could just power through, I don't know how you could power through everything here, but she goes through very quickly, and she'll pick out a painting, or two, and then she'll just sit down at that and watch that painting. She'll study it. She'll watch the reaction of people coming past, and then she'll just, in her mind, make up a story that fits it. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because I can tell you that when I come here, I often will take a picture of something that I like, and I find I'm attracted to the same ones again and again and again. If you've seen the big bull or steer that's upstairs, that one, to me, it doesn't belong in the booth. But I'm so attracted to it. And one of the things that I like about it is that when I first saw it, I kept walking up closer and closer, because I thought, this thing's 3D. It's got to be 3D. And I finally had to get to the side and look, and it wasn't 3D. So I just made a story up about it, and I put it in our little writer's newsletter. And as artists, I'm going to get back to you guys about this, about what you're creating. Anyway, so Tracy's quite famous. These are some of the books that she's written, and she's very much an award-winning author in many respects. Anyway, she's British, so she couldn't be nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, but they wanted to do it, but apparently you have to be an American to be mentioned for the Pulitzer Prize. And anyway, she grew, but she was originally from America, and I guess she gave up her American citizenship long time ago. And she's really famous for her historical novels. And I recommend, I've read the books that I'm going to talk about, I've read them all. And I read them all before anybody asked me. I like these books, and somehow they hit my list of what I was going to read. But I've read other ones that she's done, and The Single Thread, I haven't done The Glassmaker, Lady and the Unicorn. Anyway, they're really good books, and I would recommend that you go ahead and maybe look at those. Okay, so again, Johannes Vermeer, they think it was 1665. It's in and I can't say, the Mauritshuis Museum in The Hague. It's 17 by 15 inches, and a lot of these paintings that you'll see they're not really big, but they're just so, they just speak to people, and the light on her face, just the way she's looking back, it does capture it. Anyway, so again, this is the story again about that she was about 19 or so, I guess, when she first saw it, or when she had seen it when she was 16. She bought it. She bought a copy of it and gazed at it, and for 16 years. And then again, she just went through this process of thinking about, what could I do with this? I've got to do something with that, and just absolutely thrilled to pieces when she found out that nobody had done anything and nobody knew anything. So that's what got her going. So as she says, paintings hold hidden narratives. And she decided in this book she was not going to do Vermeer's perspective. It was going to be the girl's perspective. And when you watch the movie, which is the easy way to do it, that's the crib notes, you'll see that it's very much the girl's perspective. But she wanted to be, even though there was no real, there was no actual information about this, she did a lot of research to make sure that it was historically accurate. And so that's something that is worth noting to any authors that are listening. Okay, so these are some quotes from her. Paintings hold their mystery, writers give them shape. I want to give her a voice, the silent girl in the portrait. I imagine the moments before and after the captured image. So those were kind of things that she wanted to do with that story, and she did it quite well. All right, here we go, some more silo art. So a lot of sheep in our silo art from Australia, and cockatoos, and then there's also, like, some of them, I forget which ones I ended up putting on, but some of them are of people that had died that were quite famous in the area, and they won't be politicians or something like that. It'll be a farmer, or it'll be, a soldier who died during the war or something like that. Okay, so the next book we're going to talk about is Geraldine Brooks' The Horse, a Novel. Anybody read that one? Did you? Yeah. Oh, good. Well, you're going to find out. I'm probably going to cheat a little bit. So, this is a story about Lexington, the racehorse, and the painting was done in 1857 by Thomas J. Scott. He was a famous artist that did horses in those times, and I'll talk about him in about 2 seconds. So. The interesting thing about this book was Geraldine Brooks happened to be at the Smithsonian for some event, and I don't know what. And actually, by the way, she's Australian too. She was born in Australia. She happened to overhear a conversation about how they had found the bones of Lexington that were sitting in the Smithsonian in boxes. You know, they hadn't deteriorated, but nobody done anything with them. And they were starting to get them cleaned up and do some stuff with it. And she thought, oh man, this is really something. And then she knew about the painting, and then there was a story about a second painting. And the second painting, I read it a couple years ago, so I might have the deals kind of wrong, but I think I'll be okay. Basically, a couple of the paintings of Lexington went missing, and literally one of them was found when an older woman, and I think she was maybe a descendant of the jockey or the groom that took care of Lexington. She had this painting in her house, and she was moving out, or she had passed away, and they were moving all the stuff out of her house. And they set the painting out on the sidewalk in New York, I believe it was, and somebody picked it up and then thought, this might be better than just a painting on the road. So then that was, I think, ended up at the Smithsonian as well. Anyway, there's another painting by Scott that hasn't been found, and that may be the painting that they're talking about. I kind of forget. But the main painting is this one right here. Lexington was an incredible horse. There is virtually no thoroughbred racing today that doesn't have Lexington in their background. Every single horse does. He only raced for a very short amount of time. The races in those days were very long distance, and he was becoming blind, and he had an infection in his, I think, in his in the bones around the eye, and that contributed to this. But my guess is, as a horse vet, is that he probably got what they call moon blindness, or anterior uveitis, which is it's a very common cause of blindness in horses. But truly, the bone structures around his eyes, the eye sockets, were deformed. So there was something fairly major going on. So he was retired, and he was put at stud. And so Geraldine took that painting and then did, again, really good research. And there's lots of stories and lots of history and well-known facts about Lexington and his life. He was originally, one things that they're not 100% sure, but they kind of think, is that he was actually owned by a groom, an African groom that worked for the fellow that actually ended up owning him and really racing him. And the African man was not allowed to race him. And this was in Kentucky. And so basically he sold him to his boss, who then went ahead and raced him. And I think there was a significant amount of exchange of money, and I don't think the original owner was that hard done. But obviously, thankfully, we don't have stuff like that going on anymore. So, whoa. So the artist is a very interesting man. Now, he was a pharmacist, and he worked under Edward Troy. And Edward Troy was quite a famous artist and did lots and lots of horses. And in fact, he even did Lexington, painted him. And there's a few paintings around, but most of these paintings have been lost. So the one by Thomas Scott is the one that's considered to be the kind of penultimate painting that everybody likes. Lexington was raced for, I think, until he was 7. And that's really old for a racehorse these days, but in the old days that was not old at all. And I think he's, or maybe he only raced 7 races, but those races were 4 miles. They weren't the mile or the half mile or something like that. They were fairly long races, and they would often race twice a day, kind of like standardbreds do today sometimes. So he had to have stamina. Thomas painted him, and I think his portrait, again, was handed down. I think in the book he dies, if I'm not mistaken. I can't, again, it's been a few years. I read it right when it came out. So, but that's the painting that she chose to use as an example of what was going on. Now, the book itself was modern history and or old history. So she fictionalized the modern aspect of this, and basically it's an African-American man who's working on helping to restore Lexington's bones at the Smithsonian. This all did get done, but I think the whole thing got moved to the Kentucky Horse Park and to it's now it is in Lexington, Kentucky, and that's where his skeleton is. But the painting itself, I think, is still, I think it might be it's in a museum in New York, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so that's just one aspect of it. And Geraldine Brooks, again, actually won the Pulitzer Prize, not for that book, for another book. But she wanted to show not just the horse, but the aspects and the history of all of this, and kind of the somewhat evolution of racism, or the whatever of racism. So that's what kind of made people really look at it. Some people were very unhappy about the ending, and some people still thought it was. I mean, it's a wonderful book. It's a great book, and I learned so much about Lexington. But that's just something that she did. So she does modern times and historical times, and weaves the stories in between. So here, some other books by her, which I've also read: Caleb's Crossing, The Wonder Years. I haven't read March, and that was the Pulitzer Prize one. And Memorial Days is about her husband. Her husband was Tony Horowitz, not Anthony Horowitz, but Tony Horowitz, who was also an author, and he died. And she's been grieving ever since, and so she's written the memoir about him. But these are all books, and she tends to write historical fiction as well. So both of these, I guess what I'm trying to say is that these authors are bringing history to modern times. And while the Girl with the Pearl Earring stays in the 1600s, many people are bringing these books out, or showing, they're taking an art object and looking at it from a modern perspective with the historical story. And it's, you never know, someday maybe one of your paintings will be done. You'll be long dead. Anyway, so again, Lexington was born in 1850. He ran 7 races, and still has the 4-mile U.S. record, because nobody runs 7 miles anymore. And his skeleton is in the Horse Museum in Kentucky. And That is an actual picture of him, there's about 3 or 4 pictures, but that's the only one that I could find. I was told there was more pictures, but I couldn't find them. I think I already showed that one. Okay, so the other one that I wanted to talk about is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. And anybody read that one? Seen that one? Oh, it's a great book. Love it. The Goldfinch is a very famous painting by Fabritius in 1854 or 1654. The Goldfinch did win the Pulitzer Prize. And so basically what happened is that she took a painting that is sitting in a museum in Europe, and she moved it temporarily or whatever to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And right away, there's an explosion. And this little boy is in the museum with his mother. And he survives, and she doesn't. And he sees this painting, and he picks it up and takes it. And it's a saga. It's a very long book. But it's all about trying to find this painting. And this little kid has it all these years. Again, old times and new times. And there's all kinds of, like, there's historical people, history intellectuals that are looking for it. All these people are looking for it. Anyway, I'm not going to give you the end of it. But the saga goes on for years and years and years. If you ever do audiobooks, I love this as an audiobook. I love the voices that the man that did this created. It's one of my favorite books for audiobooks. Okay, Fabritius, and he's the one that died in the explosion, and and most of his paintings were lost, but that one wasn't. Again, the painting isn't that big, and so that's one of the reasons she used that painting, was because a kid could put it, in his shirt or under a shirt or in a satchel or something, and hide it for years. And so that worked out really well. This is one of the few paintings that did survive. So, but not much is known about him other than that. And again, most of his art was lost. So, the Song of the Lark is a painting that was done in France, but somehow it made it out to America, and Eleanor Roosevelt said it is the most beloved painting in America. She just loved it. And an interesting thing is that Bill Murray loves this painting and credits it with giving him inspiration, so he goes to visit it and gets inspired. So years after it was painted, a lady named Willa Cather wrote a story about the painting, and it has to do with Americans, and it isn't really the what was depicted in the picture. That picture is in France, but so she wrote that one, and that one was quite popular as well, and helped kind of make the painting a bit more popular too. So again, now I think if I remember correctly, these 3 people were killed doing stuff, and that's why their paintings are on that art. So kind of talking about what's about art and all the things that are going on. Let's just say for the writers of us, we're looking at a painting, you need to have context, and you need to put it, like if you have a picture of that bull upstairs, you can't put it, you can't put it down in Mexico, you can't put it on a boat going to Europe. Your story has to, I think, kind of align with what you see. Now, it looks to me like that bull's in a show ring, or it's about to go into a show ring. And so, is this being led by a little kid for the future farmers of America? Is it some man's gigantic, grub stake to fame and fortune because he's going to sell all the baby bulls from it? But there's a story with that bull. And I don't know what it really is, but I know what mine was. I know mine was that as a veterinarian, I was called because all of a sudden it couldn't walk on its foot. And so it was going into the show ring for the grand final judging, and it couldn't walk. And so I'm called to find out what's going on. And so I lift up the hoof, and there's a piece of wire stuck between the two claws of the hoof. And there's two men, as I'm leaning over doing this, there's two men standing on the side, kind of looking at me. And then when I find this object, which instantly takes all the pain away from the animal, and it's going to be for sure be able to go into the ring, the men are upset, and you could tell that they had hurt this bull to try to keep their interest going, and what I would say is the bull was nobbled, and so that's the story, short and sweet. But there's others up there that have paintings, like some of the ones that where there's pioneers walking into a beautiful valley. Oh my goodness, there's so many stories that I could write with that. But I couldn't put that into a perspective of somebody, writing about car races in America or something. You gotta put things together, and you should have a really good story that fits with what's going on. And to do that, especially for some of the paintings of depicting the Old West, you need to have Old Western ideas, and you need to understand what life was like. And so you need to do a little history and a little reading, and so your story fits the art that you're describing. As far as evidence being important, the artifacts of Lexington's bones and the fact that there was damage up high was kind of fit the story of what was going on. And yes, this really was Lexington. And then the painting itself, she had to find the history of where that painting came from and who this man was. So when you're doing, real, you're writing about art that has been created, you have to pretty much stick with the facts. You can vary it, but you're not going to write about an Arabian gelding when you see that picture of Lexington. So then the other the other thing is that you have to see the mood, and I think the mood will really come out in the painting. The painting, the artist will set the mood. Will there be dark tones? Will there be light tones? Will somebody be smiling or laughing in the painting? The artist is going to set the tone, and then as a writer, you're going to have to follow that. So here's my suggestion. What I would recommend is that art and writing can inspire each other. So if there's a piece of a poetry or a book or something that you've read that's really inspired you, I would highly recommend that you just maybe as a writer take a couple minutes just to think of a story that goes with it. When you go upstairs and you go around in the museum, pick out a painting that just knocks you off your feet. And there's probably 100 there for me. And just for 2 seconds, just stop and think, what's the story behind this? What could the story be? And then as an artist, when you create your images, it's okay to have a simple picture like a vase with flowers, or a vase, that's too much Australian, sorry. But make something like, if you're gonna do that, put something down next to it on the table, like a knife with blood on it or something. So there's a story with what you're doing, and I think as somebody who likes art, I'm going to be attracted to something. I don't want to see a banana on a wall. Okay, that to me is like, I mean, there's a heck of a story with that, but no thanks. I want something that's going to make me think of something that's going on in here, and so for the artists, think about what is the story that you're trying to create, and for the writers, what's the story that they wanted to do, or what story would you like from a painting? Again, so paint something that inspires a story, and find a painting that inspires a story, depending on what you're doing. So my only other contribution to art is the fact that I use I have clients in Australia who still paint paintings for me, and they are, I like my individual paintings, and I feel like they are, they're very emotive for me. So I kind of get this idea about what I want, and then I'll call them or write to them, and it was hard work to begin with, but I got better at showing what I wanted to do. The 3 of the pictures are made by a woman who always owed me money, so that was easy. And in fact, sadly, on the last one, the Custody Down Under, which I just love that painting, she didn't owe me any more money because I'd been gone for about 4 years, but I was over there and I explained to her what I wanted, and so I actually did an AI vision of it, but I said, no, I don't use AI on anything I might use it for a promotion or something like that, but I don't use it on my books, and so I said, this is kind of what I want, and oh my God, she just took it and made it so much better. You can't see it there, but you just about can see the hair on the men's legs. The catch and release one was made by a woman named Fiona Hyacin, and her grandfather is Hans Hyacin, who was one of the most famous Australian painters ever. As a little kid, she painted with him. I think he died when she was about 12, and one of the most prolific and most famous painters in Australia, and she's picked up a lot of his stuff. So what you can't see, and you can't see it in this is kind of an older version, that picture, but there's actually horses inside there. It's hard to see them, but they are there, so it's lots of fun. And I think that's kind of it. I think that we're done here, unless you guys have some questions. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming. Yeah.